Is
People would consider us crass and lowbrow, but hey, we were funny.
Where the groundbreaking comedy on camera
We had the smuttiest show on TV.
was nothing compared to the wild antics off camera.
You got away with murder, actually.
TV Tales Night Court, all new, coming up next on E! Anna's got something to get off her.
Thank you. How do you drink it? Like this?
Sugar pie, come here.
This is such a neat drink. It makes the drink taste better.
I like to watch it fizz up. I like to watch it fizz up and come down.
It wasn't exactly Perry Mason or Law & Order.
What happened, Marie? You lose your head?
For 9 years, Night Court put the scales of justice into the hands of an uncontrollable group of misfits.
Night Court didn't try to be cool.
We were a show with giant dildos floating through.
Some people would consider us crass and lowbrow, you know, but hey, we were funny.
In the next hour, you're a witness to Night Court. We'll pack the docket with exclusive interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, and private home movies never seen before on television.
Bob's doing this and he doesn't have any pants on.
It's a good thing justice is blind.
Hey, Moose, how you doing? Hey, Night Court, Moose, how you doing?
This character's name is Bull. Do you mind? Get away from me.
This is Night Court, TV Tales. Back in the 1980s, NBC ruled Thursday nights with some of the most popular and critically acclaimed sitcoms that ever hit the airwaves. The Peacock's all-star lineup was the beginning of a television dynasty that became known as must-see TV. But there was one show in the lineup that didn't quite fit, an irreverent, wacky, off-center comedy that was more like misfit TV.
We weren't the darlings of the industry that, say, Cheers or Cosby or Family Ties were at the time. We were kind of the, oh yeah, Night Court.
No, what? Oh. Walter, have you been cheating?
I think more people watched Night Court than would admit they watched Night Court, you know, because we were sort of the vaudeville of television.
Guess all I'm qualified to do is to pass judgment on scantily dressed women with loose morals.
We never got a 2-hour special. We never went to Gilligan's Island. We never got to play the Harlem Globetrotters.
We weren't doing masterpiece theater. I mean, we had the smuttiest show on TV.
When people see me, they always say to me, "You guys must have had so much fun."
You got away with murder, actually.
The man behind the Night Court mayhem was Reinhold Wiggy, a fearless writer who earned his stripes in the 70s on the breakthrough cop comedy Barney Miller.
Wound up writing about 50 episodes of that and producing it at tender young age of mid-20s.
Wiggy learned how to make justice funny on Barney Miller. He picked up a few other habits as well. Assistant director Jeff Melman.
The scripts were never done. We would shoot until from 10 in the morning until sometimes 3, 4, 5 the next morning. And I thought, that was my first show, I thought everybody did that.
Wiggy kept up his round-the-clock production schedule until ABC took Barney Miller off the air in 1982. When that show was over, the young hotshot producer tried to write his own ticket in Hollywood.
The broad area of a court show was brought to me by NBC and the Warner Brothers executives. Knowing my background in the legal field of Barney Miller, they thought I might be a guy to do a show in this arena.
NBC's first attempt at courtroom comedy was in 1976 with the short-lived series Sorota's Court. The show starred Michael Constantine as the judge. It was canceled after 1 season. In 1982, the network was ready to try again.
I told Brandon Tartikoff, who was head of NBC Entertainment at the time, that I would think about it, and if I could come up with an interesting central character, I'd consider doing a pilot. Went and thought about it and thought about this crazy kind of judge character.
Reinhold knew exactly where to look for inspiration. He wasn't interested in hanging out with the Ivy League set. The writer started researching at the bottom of the barrel.
I actually went to New York, and I actually sat on the bench with a Night Court judge, and I was just moved by the craziness of New York, Manhattan, Night Court. There were stories in the newspaper at the time of judges with serious emotional problems who the state and or whatever the local authority is has a hard time getting rid of. And I thought, gosh, it would be terrific if we could get a judge through the system. It was a little off-center, a little wacky.
Wiggy named the character Judge Harry Stone, the youngest judge in New York State history and an amateur magician to boot. The writer expected Harry's sleight-of-hand judgments and screwball verdicts to keep the audience laughing. Hopefully, the network brass would agree.
Came back and told them the idea, and they said, yeah, let's try it.
NBC and Warner Brothers put the courtroom comedy on the fast track, and Wiggy started looking for actors who could play the eccentric judge. On the first day of casting, the judge found him.
This young, skinny kid came in and said to me, I am this character. And my eyes rolled up into my head.
One day a script came to my office, and here was this show about this young guy named Harry, who was the youngest judge in history and a Mel Torme fan, which I've been all my life, and a amateur magician, and it was a very, very clever script.
Harry Anderson was a real magician and a genuine oddball. As a kid, Anderson started performing tricks and pulling cons on the streets of New Orleans. In the early 1970s, Harry was running a hustle known as a shell game.
I was a little naive. I got my jaw broken at one point, realized that I didn't have much of a future running a rough hustle. So I turned it into a comedy expose, so that I was basically telling the audience how to avoid getting ripped off by the other guys that they would see on the street.
Harry began traveling the country with a sidewalk act. His sense of humor made him a natural for television, and he was booked as a variety act on Saturday Night Live in 1982. A young TV writer who was developing a new comedy for NBC did a double take when he saw Harry.
The first time that I appeared on Saturday Night Live, Les Charles, of Les and Glenn Charles and Jim Burrows, saw me, remembered that I had taken $20 off him in San Francisco with a shell game, and he and his brother and Jim Burrows were putting together a show called Cheers. So they called me in and hired me for that show long before they ever shot it.
Harry appeared in the first episode of Cheers. After that, other television opportunities immediately popped up.
I started getting offers for to play Ricky Schroeder's dad on Silver Spoons and to be Henry Winkler's new pal on Happy Days.
Anderson turned down those offers. He stuck to his recurring part on Cheers and continued performing tricks on Saturday Night Live. Then came a role too good to be true, like magic for real.
We were watching the Saturday Night Live. Harry Anderson was on the show when he was doing his bit where he stuck a needle through his arm, and very clever. And this character that Riney wrote was interested in magic and was sort of a young-ish, guy. And my wife said, what about him?
The name Harry and the fact that he did magic was a coincidence. And when Harry said he was the guy, I'll be damned, he turned out to be the guy.
Wiggy was sold on Harry Anderson, but he had to get the big boss at NBC to go along with his choice.
Brandon Tartikoff, again, who was head of NBC at the time, the second he saw Harry Reid, agreed with me that, yep, this is new, this is different, this is young, let's do it.
Harry Anderson got the job as the quirky Judge Stone. Now, Wiggy had to find an equally outlandish group of actors who could bring disorder to the court.
By Corona Extra, miles away from ordinary.
In the spring of 1983, Harry Anderson was on board to star in the pilot for Night Court, but a lot of roles still needed to be filled, so producer Reinhold Wiggy searched for a cast who would dispense jokes instead of justice.
There is no way one can possibly guess what kind of human being is going to walk in and play your character.
Enter John Larroquette. At 33, the actor was best known for his role as the bumbling captain in the 1982 film Stripes. Wiggy knew that Larroquette was the perfect choice to play the despicable district attorney, Dan Fielding.
Alex Keaton grown up. That's how I first described Dan Fielding, because in the original script, he was just sort of an unctuous, uptight, right-wing kind of guy.
To play opposite the pompous DA, Wiggy and his creative team searched for a drop-dead gorgeous defense attorney who could also be funny. One early candidate was Markie Post, a blonde, quick-witted actress who got her start on some of America's favorite game shows.
I wrote questions for Family Feud, and I shopped for unusual prizes for Price is Right. I worked for Mark Goodson Productions, and I did that for about 3 years.
In the mid-70s, Marky decided to try her luck at acting.
I started guest starring on whatever the shows were at the time, The Love Boat and, you know, Fantasy Island.
The guest spots paid off. In 1982, Marky got a chance to do her own sitcom, produced by Reinhold Wiege and directed by Jeff Millman.
We had done a pilot called Dads. I had done it with Riney, and Marky Post was in that, as was Martin Short.
The pilot didn't sell because Martin Short didn't test well. Ha! They'd like to have him now, I bet.
Wiege remembered Marky when he was casting Night Court. The producer believed Post was ideal to play the perky, self-righteous public defender, Christine Sullivan. But timing is everything.
And I was unavailable because I was doing The Fall Guy.
With Marky out, actress Gail Strickland was hired to play the defense attorney. Karen Austin signed on as court clerk Lana Wagner. And for his next choice, Wiege picked the actor before he created the character.
The only part in the show that I wrote specifically for an actor was Selma Diamond. Selma was one of the first female comedy writers in a male-dominated business.
Mamma mia. It's Italian. To you, babe.
Selma Diamond, with her deadpan delivery and raspy voice, became wisecracking bailiff Selma Hacker. Wiege then looked to the opposite end of the spectrum for the other bailiff, known only as Bull. The inevitable choice was from the other end of the galaxy.
At that time, I was doing a film called Metal Storm, The Destruction of Jared's Sin. Remember that one? Don't lie to me. Nobody saw that. That opened on an airline, I think. I don't know what happened with it. But it was a 3D epic in which I played Hurok, leader of the Cyclopeans, a race of bald, one-eyed, desert-dwelling mutants. So I shaved my head for the part. And about that time, I got the audition for Night Court.
There was a 6'8" bald man standing in front of me, none of which fit the character in my mind's eye, but he read and was absolutely wonderful. And I remember saying to Richard, I want you to keep that hair balding.
I said, are you kidding? I'll shave my legs for the part. I'll shave my rear end for the part. I don't care. Just give me the part, okay?
Mole cracked jokes about himself, but the kidding stopped when he went to work, even on a sitcom.
I'm probably just taking too much time with it right now, but I hate to lose it because I think it's funny.
It never occurred to me that we had to take that seriously. I think that probably put Richard off a little bit in the beginning.
Anderson was a quick study. He picked up pointers by observing the other actors. On one occasion, Harry learned commitment to the craft from John Larroquette.
I remember during the pilot, flubbing a line, and I went insane. I mean, I punched the table that I was standing by, and it supposedly scared the crap out of Harry.
I thought he'd broken his hand. He hit it so hard, he must have broken his hand. Well, he hadn't. But I thought, man, this guy is intense. This man is on a wire.
As the actors honed in on their characters, producer Reinhold Wiege held the NBC brass at arm's length. He didn't want anyone to mess with his pilot. Network chief Brandon Tartikoff obliged. Yet NBC wasn't quick to pick up Night Court when the pilot was finished in the summer of 1983. The network brass tried to figure out what to do with the racy half-hour sitcom. Former NBC executive Warren Littlefield.
We didn't put it on the fall schedule, but we did have the intelligence to say, you know what, we better order this thing as a backup show because we think there's something here.
NBC ordered 3 additional episodes, but one of the network suits got off to a rocky start with the show's producer.
I had some problems. I believe it was with the first episode of Night Court after the pilot between myself and Warren Littlefield. Littlefield looked at a scene and thought it should be another way, and I said, well, no, you're wrong. It should be the way it is.
Reinhold just had kind of a different drummer going on in his brain. You'd try and say to him, Reinhold, can we talk about the second act of this week's show? And he'd pull out his gun and he'd wind it up and he'd just start zapping you with a ray gun. And you'd go, I'm not sure this guy's listening.
Beyond the battle for creative control, Wiege started tweaking his characters. The overbearing district attorney was a work in progress.
When the show started, the character of Dan Fielding was very prissy. He poo-pooed the idea of prostitutes, and he had the feeling that maybe he'd never been laid.
What happened was, as Reinhold and I got to know each other, what I consider funny started creeping into the character a little.
While Dan Fielding was getting twisted into shape, the producers found a new defense attorney for the lecherous DA to torment. Gail Strickland was replaced by Paula Kelly. The model-turned-actress was hired to play defense attorney Liz Williams. Satisfied with the changes, Wiege looked forward to the show's mid-season premiere. but early reviews of the pilot were mixed.
There were some absolute raves, some, you know, go home and don't come back again. Reviews don't have much to do with network television.
The only thing that really matters are ratings, and on that front, the news was even worse. Night Court premiered on January 4th, 1984, and finished last in its time slot.
Night Court is a classic example of a sitcom that was probably misscheduled, but it started on Wednesday night at 9:30 out of the Facts of Life.
Night Court continued to struggle on Wednesday nights, losing regularly to the CBS Wednesday Night Movie and the ABC hit Dynasty. But NBC executives were hopeful the show's numbers would improve.
So we just kind of said, all right, don't know that we have something better. Let's just hang in here. Looks like something good is brewing.
Still, the network was reluctant to give Night Court a permanent commitment.
They ordered 3 episodes, and then they ordered 4 more episodes.
And they gave us just several more until we got our first 13. So we just eked it out bit by bit.
By the end of its first season, Night Court failed to crack the Nielsen Top 30. When production ended, the cast and crew all wondered if they would return.
Tomorrow.
In the spring of 1984, Night Court wrapped its first season with mixed results. The ratings were modest and critics were not impressed. But the top brass at NBC liked the show and found a place for Night Court in their master plan to revive the network.
There was no security in it until they picked up that second season. And then television as we knew it, you know, really changed.
In the early 1980s, NBC was running third in a 3-network race. Then came Cosby, and the Peacock enjoyed a big boost in the Nielsen ratings. Rather than spread the wealth to different nights, programming executives stacked NBC's best shows on Thursdays.
The first thing we did was counter-program CBS on Thursday night. CBS had a show called Magnum P.I. at 8 o'clock, and they were kicking butt, followed by Simon and Simon. And we said, let's be a comedy alternative. Cosby Show, let's put that in there. Family Ties, let's put that in there. You know, then we have Cheers. Hey, we're an alternative.
They needed a show to air out of Cheers, Thursday at 9:30. They put Night Court in.
Night Court replaced the sagging series Buffalo Bill. That was bad news for star Dabney Coleman, but good news for supporting actor Charles Robinson, who played makeup artist Nudell Spriggs on the canceled show. Night Court added some new cast members for its second season. Robinson was hired to replace Karen Austin and stepped into the role of Mac the clerk.
Riney wanted for me was to be the guy who kind of kept the top on the pot, so to speak. When they would get really crazy, I was the one who said, hey, take it easy, sir. You know, don't go there, sir.
There were other changes. Paula Kelly was out. She was replaced by Shelley Hack. The former star of Charlie's Angels arrived to play defense attorney Christine Sullivan, but Shelley didn't stay long.
Shelley Hack was very sweet. She lasted about 16 minutes, as I remember. Yeah, that was tough.
We rehearsed for the first episode, and we had a run-through for the network, and they made the decision that, Shelley Hack wasn't working and wanted to replace her. And so our first thought went to Markie Post.
Post was still under contract for The Fall Guy, but Markie was always Reinhold Weege's first choice to play the idealistic public defender.
So I got off of Fall Guy just for 1 week to do this part of Christine Sullivan.
Even though she was only on the set for a few days, Markie made an immediate impression on her co-stars.
I used to say, she's so much nicer than a girl who looks like that has to be. I once saw Markie Post bump into a chair and apologize to the chair.
After her week on Night Court, Markie went back to The Fall Guy, and Ellen Foley was brought in to play public defender Billy Young for the rest of the season.
I mean, I think that as good as Ellen Foley was, she, I think, quite honestly, was too much like Harry. You know, she was thin and funny, and they looked like they should be playing brother and sister.
In the fall of 1984, NBC's plan for Thursday night domination paid off. The Peacock soared past the other networks with the highest-rated shows on the most-watched night of television. Suddenly, the cast of Night Court learned what it was like to be TV stars.
I used to sit in restaurants and really wonder why people were looking at me, and wonder whether I had food on my face.
And when the show started to hit its stride and people started to recognize, they'd see me, they go, hey, Moose, how you doing? Hey, Night Court, Moose, how you doing? It's, character's name is Bull. Do you mind? Get away from me.
As the cast came to grips with stardom, show creator Reinhold Weege kept up his tug-of-war with NBC executives.
I think he sort of enjoyed the competition between him and the network. And he would go to network meetings where he was going to get notes on a script, and he wouldn't take his script.
The struggle continued when the suit showed up on the Warner Brothers lot.
I refused to let the network people sit by my monitor. I refused to let them talk to me, certainly during the taping of a show.
The cast enjoyed the sense of freedom that Weege created on the Night Court set. They often acted as weird as their characters.
Every time we would do the show, before we started, Harry tried to kiss me. He never did.
Harry's outlandish behavior was no match for John Larroquette's R-rated vernacular.
John is a very witty fellow and an advocate of free speech, so you would never want to bring your mother to the set. That's all I can say.
You know, what's really interesting is that Bob's doing this and he doesn't have any pants on.
When it came to playing Dan Fielding, Larroquette was equally unpredictable.
Oftentimes, guest stars would be completely thrown by the fact that John wasn't doing what he had rehearsed during the week, and it was great fun to watch.
Comedy is crucial.
And even more fun to write for.
Your innermost wiseacre remarks came out, and through John, they just blasted through the screen. They were great, and he would add to them.
But one veteran cast member really liked to challenge the writers. As far as Selma Diamond was concerned, she knew funny, and she wasn't afraid to make everyone aware.
We're here to introduce a show that takes place in the most wonderful resort in the world, Miami. Land of Coppertone and corned beef. Mink coats, cha-cha lessons, the Jackie Gleason show. It's been canceled. Canceled?
Selma was sitting at a script table during a rehearsal one time between takes, telling the actor next to her how crummy she thought the script was. And unbeknownst to Selma, I just sat down next to her and I listened, and she finished telling the actor how crummy the script was, turned, looked, and saw me, never changed expression, and said, "Ow, you're here." I said, "Yep, I'm here." Selma didn't care.
In the spring of 1985, the cast of Night Court celebrated the fact that their show was a top 20 hit, but the celebration ended abruptly. Decades of chain smoking finally caught up with Selma Diamond.
She missed 1 or 2 episodes. Nobody said she had cancer, but put 2 and 2 together, she smoked like a chimney.
Selma Diamond passed away on May 13th, 1985. She was 64. The cast of Night Court lost a beloved friend and an important factor in the show's success.
One character would say, "You can't buy love." And Selma would be in the background saying, "He must be new in town."
And we were talking about ways to die, and she looked up and she said to me, "You know how I want to die? I want to be 90 and shot by a jealous lover." That was Selma.
Although the cast was still mourning the loss of Selma Diamond, there was a bright note that summer. Both Harry Anderson and John Larroquette were nominated for Emmys. Anderson lost the award for Outstanding Actor in a Comedy to Robert Guillaume from Benson. But John Larroquette won his first Emmy as Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy, beating out the trio from Cheers, Nicholas Colasanto, George Wendt, and John Ratzenberger.
To hear your name called out is just, you know, spectacular. It's like being a 17-year-old in the greatest whorehouse in New Orleans, you know? I mean, and with a little card that says, give him anything he wants.
By the end of its second season, Night Court ranked number 20 in the Nielsen ratings. The cast and crew looked forward to even better results the following year. Executive producer Reinhold Weege was cautiously optimistic.
When you got to be that successful, I think it was more a concern to a producer of, will I stay on Thursday night?
This Friday, Jules Asner takes you inside the private world of some of Hollywood's biggest stars. Susan Sarandon revealed tomorrow at 10 on E!
In the fall of 1985, the cast of Night Court returned for their third season without Selma Diamond. She was a tough act to follow.
The very idea that anyone could replace Selma Diamond was ridiculous.
Florence Halleff, a 62-year-old character actress, came to Night Court looking and sounding a lot like her predecessor. Executive producer Reinhold Weege used the resemblance to introduce the new bailiff in the first episode of the season.
Florence, who was short and had the creaky voice just like Selma. And she's asking, what was this Selma like? And Bull says, well, she was short, and she was, She had a funny voice, And she was kind of a dour attitude. And she goes, how pathetic. And it was exactly the same as Selma.
Weege also brought back his first choice for public defender. Thanks to the cancellation of The Fall Guy, defense attorney Christine Sullivan was permanently assigned to Night Court.
So I established the character then, and a year later, then I came back and did her, and Reinhold was very happy. He said, "I feel like I have my cast."
Order!
Weege also used Night Court as a platform to introduce some of the strangest characters on television.
The statute they violated is an outdated blue law. I mean, what's the matter with displaying a little affection? Oh, for Pete's sake, cut that out!
People used to take dates to Night Court just to watch the fun of the dregs of humanity that paraded through there nightly. And I'm sure it was sometimes amusing and sometimes tragic, but both of them worked for me in terms of generating stories.
The writers poke fun at various social issues, including homelessness. Recurring guest star William Ute played Phil the Derelict, a character that could be summed up in one word.
Humiliation. Always great humiliation. And it was one of John Larroquette's great strengths that they would have John do the most heinous things, specifically directed toward me.
It was just hilarious to think that you had this urchin running around doing the bidding of this bizarre man.
The outrageous characters and slapstick storylines proved there was a place for Misfit TV on NBC.
They were misfits. They were not the class act. They didn't want to be. They knew that, okay, maybe Cheers and Cosby, they may gather a lot of the Emmys, but they were doing great, memorable comedy.
The Night Court didn't try to be cool. It wasn't a cool show. It was seltzer down your pants. It was an elephant coming into the courtroom, a guy falling from a desk through the ceiling.
Night Court finished its third season as the 11th highest rated show on television. That summer, John Larroquette won his second straight Emmy for Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy. But tragedy struck Night Court once again. Before the start of season 4, the cast had to live through the death of another co-star.
Florence Hallop comes to the show, and she's with us for a year, and then we lost her.
It was a lot of deja vu to have two similar sounding actresses both die of the same disease.
They both passed away from lung cancer, so let that be a lesson to you folks. Don't smoke.
Instead of finding another actor like Selma Diamond or Florence Hallop, the producers took a different approach with the bailiff role. Stand-up comic Marsha Warfield was called in to read.
I was on the road when I got the call for Night Court, and had never really seen the show. And I walked into the audition, and I was worried because I didn't have a purse, and I was carrying a little pocketbook and a pack of cigarettes, and I was worried that that would reflect badly on me.
The fact that 2 previous bailiffs died of lung cancer did not faze Marsha Warfield. The actress was hired to play Roz Russell.
I know that Cass used to tease her about the fact that 2 actresses had died in the part, and here she was taking a chance on it too.
I wasn't really scared. I was sorry that 2 people had to die before I could get the job, but I'd have killed 4 or 5 more.
As the 4th season of Night Court got underway, Marsha didn't let her lack of experience in front of the camera intimidate her.
I did take acting lessons for a minute, and I took a class. I'll never forget. They told me to buy a book. And on the first page of the book, it said, the key to acting is to keep it simple. And I said, then what do I need this book for? And I dropped out of the class and never went back.
Warfield's character was clearly different from the previous 2 bailiffs. Fans responded.
The guy walks over to me and says, you know, I know you from somewhere. I said, well, yeah. I said, you'd probably know me from television. And I said, I'm on a series called Night Court. He said, oh, you're on Marsha Warfield's show. I said, I've been on the show 3 years, and Marsha, well, now he's telling me I'm on Marsha Warfield's show.
She was sort of like our sumo of comedy. You know, she was a character that that could stand up to anybody. It added an element of sarcasm to the show.
Larroquette helped Warfield get the biggest payoff with the few lines she had.
What I learned from John was to let it go. Let it go. Commit to it, whatever it is you're doing, and go all the way. He didn't hold back. Ow! You never got the sense that he was editing himself or second-guessing himself.
God, I want that job.
Or that he even had a sense of himself as John Larroquette while he was being Dan Fielding.
When Night Court wrapped season 4, John Larroquette won his 3rd straight Emmy for Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy. But Harry Anderson pulled off a different kind of three-peat in the lead actor category.
They say being nominated is winning enough. No, it isn't. Winning is winning enough. Being nominated just points out that you didn't win. And the folks who didn't get nominated, they didn't have to put on a tuxedo and schlep down there and sit there to congratulate Michael J. Fox for winning his 89th Emmy.
Night Court finished its 4th season in the Nielsen Top 10, but executive producer Reinhold Wiege had little time to enjoy the success.
I just cared so much to keep it the way I wanted and to keep the integrity of the comedy and the silliness and the substance and the characters, and that takes work and work and work, and you do it for as long as you can, and then you run away.
The time had come for the show's creator to reach a verdict. Would the man who came up with Misfit TV take a walk? And if he left, would Night Court adjourn for the last time?
Hey, you, get back here!
Butch, when Frankie the Designer confronts Bobby Trendy.
Just make Anna happy.
It's an all-new episode this Sunday at 10 on E!
Who's this? He claims to be God.
How dare you have the temerity to suggest that you're God?
Who are you?
I'm God!
In the fall of 1987, Night Court was known as the wild card on NBC's primetime schedule. After 5 seasons, fans could count on the wacky comedy to deliver laughs and surprises.
Manifested themselves in Greenblatt's deli, whereupon they began to smite each other with turkey rolls.
Thou shalt have no other gods before me. How'd you like a thunderbolt where the sun don't shine?
We had an episode where I actually am, because we were a Warner Brothers show, where I'm actually yelling at the coyote and telling him to leave the Roadrunner alone, and we added them, you know, as animations.
The show attracted a parade of guest stars. Word of mouth got around that Night Court was a fun gig. Even the king of late night, Johnny Carson, agreed to get in on the act to mark the 100th episode.
We called him and asked him if he would do it, and he said yeah. So, you know, much to our surprise, I remember we filmed it and then we played it back for him, and he had the best time watching it.
As Night Court wrapped season 5, John Larroquette won his 4th straight Emmy for Best Supporting Actor.
It was partly the fact that Reinhold had created one of the funniest guys on television, and that I helped portray one of the funniest guys on television. Not me as the actor, not John Larroquette, but Dan Fielding for that time and that place was everything. He was the villain, he was the schlub, he was the loser, he was the ass.
If Larroquette's success went to his head, it was hard to tell.
Why are we doing this again? I don't know.
When the cast returned to Night Court for season 6, a lot of egos were inflated.
And I'm talking about.
We're just questioning that in here ourselves.
The hardest thing about doing the show was getting us to settle down and do the show.
John and Harry had its kind of like spending war. You know, they'd drive in with a car and go, look what I got, and John would have to go buy something. This is buying wars. They'd hate me for saying this, but it was true.
You could just buy anything you wanted and it didn't like dent you at all. So, you know, in those days it was, you know, cell phones, which were about at that point, about as big as my foot, right? We just kept buying, every time they got smaller, we had to buy the new one.
The stars had plenty of spending power, but they found out who really pulled the strings on Night Court. Although the show finished its 6th year in the Nielsen Top 10, NBC announced it was pulling Night Court from the popular Thursday night lineup. Misfit TV was moving to Wednesdays.
You have to spread the wealth around. We would not be #1 if we were a one-night network. So ultimately, you take your loved ones and you say, we respect you, we love you, you've got to go out and you've got to go do something for us, you know, out there away from Thursday.
The move signified the beginning of the end for executive producer Reinhold Wiege. For Wiege, the laughs were becoming shorter and the days much longer.
I was just tired. I'd just done the show for 6 years. I'd done everything I wanted to do.
Rather than risk burnout by doing another season of Night Court, Wiege told NBC and Warner Brothers he was cutting back. He brokered a new 2-year deal to keep the show on the air and agreed to stay on strictly as a consultant.
It was at the end of year 6, and the show was already picked up for year 7 and 8. You know, maybe if I'd had total control, I might have stopped the show at that time. They had the final say as to whether it stayed on.
When Night Court returned for its 7th season, the show dropped from the Nielsen Top 20. The numbers weren't good, and the future was suddenly up for grabs.
So I never felt that the show was in trouble. I felt that, you know, that people were still watching it after like the 6th or 7th year. And then you start to hear, you begin to hear it's the possible that the show might be canceled the next year.
With dark clouds gathering, the cast started growling about their jobs.
Every week you go, this is it. You know, it works too hard. We're so spoiled.
Suddenly, work wasn't much fun anymore. Even John Larroquette's Dan Fielding seemed outdated.
It was partly my fault, because all of a sudden, here we were not working for Reinhold Wigge, who had created this. So I didn't feel like I was working for someone anymore.
NBC Entertainment chief Brandon Tartikoff made the decision that the 8th year of Night Court would be its last. He approached writers Chris Kloos and Stuart Kreisman with a plan to end the series.
We got a call from Brandon Tartikoff and Warner's saying, do you want to run the show? The show has already been canceled before year 8 starts, so you can do whatever you want. We're going to cancel you by the end of the show. You can write to the end of the show. So we said, okay.
By then, the entire cast looked forward to making the 8th season their last. When Night Court reconvened in the fall of 1990, the 8th season was supposed to be the last. A new creative team decided to bring down the final gavel with a bang. At least that was their plan.
We had it all figured out. Nothing could go wrong. We were going to get Harry and Christine together. They were possibly going to get married. Dan Fielding was going to lose everything and end up homeless on the street.
To help fill a void left by the recently canceled Miami Vice, NBC moved Night Court to Fridays for its final year. But halfway through the season, NBC execs did an about-face. They moved Night Court back to Wednesdays, where the show had a better chance of scoring a decent rating and turning a profit.
Night Court is the classic case of milking a series that has been on the air for a very long time.
The network bosses threw Night Court another curve, and this one fouled up the show's farewell plan.
We got about 4/5 of the way there when they said, you're coming back for another year.
While the writers scrambled to straighten out the storylines, cast members weren't sure they wanted to come back.
We felt like we were all done with it, and really how much more could we do? And after 8 years, feel like you want to be doing something else. So it looked like we were wrapping up, and sure enough, right before the end, and before we ended the show, they came through with like jumbo buckets of money for the cast.
The cast agreed that extra pay was worth one more year.
So the money we were making times 22 was Judas Priest. I mean, that's, you know, a year in Hawaii if you wanted it.
The writers had to untie all the loose ends they'd sewn up and create fresh plots for the following season.
We came up with some cockamamie idea, fantasy show, Phantom of the Opera, where Dan Fielding was living in the sewers of Manhattan, and he kidnapped Christine, and it was just a wild, bizarre show. But what it was doing, it was getting out of what we did the year before.
When Night Court returned for season 9, the show was definitely struggling.
Yeah, and it went downhill. I mean, it got bizarre, and you kind of run out of things to say.
In the spring of 1992, NBC officially gave Night Court the axe. As production came to a close, the show was facing its second final curtain. Or maybe it wasn't dead after all.
We'd been canceled by NBC, but Warner's told us not to do a last episode, because they were thinking of putting the show in first-run syndication.
But Warner Brothers couldn't find any takers willing to keep Night Court alive. When the cast showed up to tape the season's final episode, they were greeted with some bad news.
I think we're treated pretty... Can you say on E? Can't, can you? I'm going to get bleeped, right? I thought we were treated very, very unfairly by both Warner Brothers and NBC.
After 9 years, a memo was handed out Friday that we got just before the taping saying, please have your dressing rooms empty by Monday. That was how the show was canceled. And I thought, that's not very classy.
I remember being circled around by a bunch of security guards. I don't know what that meant. They just told me to get off the lot and get out of there. I don't know, if that had anything to do with the show being canceled or not.
After 9 years on the air, cast members spent some time reminiscing before taping the last episode.
Everybody was all sad, and everybody was writing little letters and notes to each other, signing everybody's scripts, and I was like, come on, let's just do the stupid show. Since it's the last one, let's get it over with. But we must have gone until midnight that night, because everybody was being so sentimental.
Even Marsha Warfield couldn't hold back her emotions during the final taping.
And they kept teasing me about being a hard ass. And then they finally introduced us for our final curtain call and asked us to speak. And as soon as I opened my mouth, I just burst into tears and started crying like a baby, and then everybody laughed at me.
When the day ended and the gavel came down on Night Court for the last time, the actors all faced uncertain futures.
You don't realize until it's over how much of your life was in, you know, I didn't really know what to do on a Monday morning.
It's like, I got to go to the prom. You know, I can move on now.
I felt kind of sad about it because this friend that I have became real close to, Mac, is now, you know, no more. However, I get a chance to see him on TV sometimes. And I got a lot of tapes of it.
Saturday. Was working in a secretarial pool, but now
I'm working on the 22nd floor.
she's moving up the ladder. And the snobs hate her.
Wouldn't you and your friends really be more comfortable around your own kind?
But the big boss
Do you want to make this your permanent gig?
thinks she's perfect.
Oh my God.
So now they'll either get along or
This means war.
Bring it on.
Less Than Perfect, coming soon only on ABC.
You may be facing your 30s, but your skin doesn't have to.
L'Oreal introduces Visible Results, the skin-renewing moisture treatment.
I see my skin transformed in just 8 days.
Breakthrough Activacell technology and SPF 15 to help enhance.
Please drink Bailey's and Ice responsibly.
Tomorrow, Jules Asner takes you inside the private world of some of Hollywood's biggest stars. Susan Sarandon revealed tomorrow at 10 on E!
After NBC canceled Night Court in the spring of 1992, the entire cast pursued other projects. That fall, Harry Anderson landed his own series on CBS, Dave's World. No more courtrooms for Harry. This time he played a newspaper columnist. The series ran for 4 years.
When I did Dave's World, I think I had the respect of the other folks on the show in a way I didn't on Night Court, and not necessarily in the best sense. I mean, I was the producer. I was the producer, writer, star of the show, and it carried with it, I think, some kind of, it set me apart from the other actors.
John Larroquette returned to television in 1993 with his own series, The John Larroquette Show, which ran 3 years on NBC. The sitcom was different from Night Court.
I made the decisions, you know, in tandem with my partners, but I made the decisions, which, you know, when you look at one lasted 9 years and one lasted 3.5 years, it wasn't such a good thing that I was making the decisions.
When her role as defense attorney Christine Sullivan ended, Markie Post joined the romantic sitcom Hearts of Fire, co-starring John Ritter. That series lasted 2 seasons on ABC. Richard Mall returned to character acting and voiceover work. For Mall, the end of Night Court was a blessing in disguise.
Always a relief to see that my hair would come back. Actually, every hiatus, it's still there.
And so is Night Court in reruns around the world. In 2001, Harry Anderson moved back to New Orleans. He now owns and operates a magic shop in the French Quarter.
Occasionally we'll be sitting in here and I'll hear a tour guide outside saying, "Here's a bit of nostalgia for you. Remember that old television show, Night Court? Well, the fellow who played the judge this is his," and I feel like I want to come to the door with my teeth out and say, "Guys, kids, get out of here. You're sleeping here."
John Larroquette doesn't get quite the same response from fans.
I was always very surprised by the reaction I would get in the world when it was at its height, you know, when I was out there in the world, and they would smile and say, "You bastard, you bastard." You know, I don't know what it was about him.
Other cast members are just happy to be recognized, even if the person recognizing them can't remember why.
Even now they say, "I know you from somewhere." I say, "Probably Night Court." No, that's not it. You're not in it. You weren't in Night Court. Yeah, I played the guy Mac on the show, man.
Still, the cast has nothing but good feelings about their years on Night Court.
I miss being part of something really good, you know, and really fun.
I don't understand why everybody doesn't want to do TV. I don't understand why people complain. I don't understand why I'm not working. I don't understand any of that because I really, really enjoy making television.
Throughout its 9-year run, Night Court was an important part of the NBC primetime schedule. and helped the Peacock establish a Thursday night ratings dynasty, proving that there will always be an audience for Misfit TV.
I think when history looks back, it'll look very, very favorably on Night Court.
Right between Cheers and Hill Street Blues. And, you know, it's not a bad epitaph. We were right between Cheers and Hill Street Blues, and it was okay with me. That worked.